Nvidia's new RTX 4050 laptop GPU is here, but how does it compare against the older RTX 3050? I've compared both in 25 games to show you all the differences. But first, this part of the video has been sponsored by Gigabyte. The Aorus 15 and 17 gaming laptops have been redesigned this year, and with Nvidia's latest RTX 40 series graphics, they're more powerful than ever. Gigabyte's G5 laptop offers a more budget-friendly option, but with RTX 40 GPUs, you still get the latest features including ray tracing, DLSS, and frame generation to enhance your gaming experience. And Gigabyte have got content creators covered with their newly updated Aero 16 and brand new Aero 14 for ultimate portability. Check out the sponsored link below to find out more. The newer RTX 4050 laptop GPU has 25% more CUDA, Tensor, and RT cores compared to the older RTX 3050 laptop GPU. The 4050 has more total memory capacity with 6 gigs compared to 4 with the older 3050, as well as faster memory, but the 4050 actually has a smaller memory bus. The newer 4050 can reach higher clock speeds thanks to the new Ada architecture, but it also has a higher maximum power range of 115 watts compared to 80 watts. I'm using entry-level gaming laptops for this comparison, so we're looking at 40 watt power limits for both the 3050 and 4050. Lower performance is expected here compared to other laptops that have higher powered 3050 or 4050s. I've measured the 3D Mark TimeSpy graphics score at different power levels, and a higher power limit results in a better score, which means more performance. Unfortunately, I can't go above 40 watts on both, as the laptops I'm using simply don't support this. But at this level, the 4050 was scoring 48% higher than the 3050. I'm using two MSI GF63 laptops that I bought for this testing. They've got different Intel CPUs inside, but both have been tested with the exact same 16 gig memory kit in dual channel. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to avoid the CPU difference, so some of the difference in this comparison may be due to this. Newer GPUs are just often paired with newer CPUs, but the difference in single and multi-threaded performance wasn't that big between them. Although both laptops are MSI's GF63, the newer 4050 version actually has a longer heat pipe that covers both the CPU and GPU, meaning thermal differences won't be apples to apples. This could be why the 4050 GPU was running cooler in Cyberpunk 2077, but the difference wasn't that big. They're far off thermal throttling, so all good. The 4050 was able to reach higher clock speeds with the new architecture, despite the fact that it was actually using slightly less power in this test compared to the 3050. The 4050 reaches higher FPS in this game too, which results in the 4050 winning from a performance per watt perspective. Basically, the 4050 is more power efficient and can do more with less. The RTX 4050 laptop was reaching a 49% higher average frame rate in this game at high settings when compared to the RTX 3050. The 4050 was just able to get us to the 60 FPS sweet spot at high settings. Both GPUs support DLSS, and they're able to get a further FPS boost with this enabled with balanced mode. Only RTX 40 series GPUs are able to use the new frame generation feature in supported games, which allowed the 4050 to run much smoother compared to the 3050. It's not all big gains for the 4050 though. In Total War Warhammer 3, there's basically no difference between them. The 4050 was technically ahead, but I doubt it's a difference you'd notice when playing. Let's check some more games. The 4050 did not have a big lead in Hogwarts Legacy either, just a 15% higher average frame rate, or 7 FPS in this case, at high settings in Hogsmeade. Both the 3050 and 4050 GPUs are able to boost FPS by enabling DLSS, but again, like Cyberpunk, enabling frame generation really sets the 4050 apart. Of course, assuming that it's even fair to compare generated frames when the visuals aren't comparable. That said, I have played this game for more than 40 hours with FrameGen on, and it's definitely better with it than without. Some games like Spider-Man were ahead in terms of average FPS with the newer 4050, but had more dips in performance, as shown by worse 1% lows. This might be due to the CPU difference discussed earlier. Turning on DLSS with balanced mode actually made the 3050 perform worse, and this was consistent. The 4050 was better with DLSS on though, so the gap between them is much larger now. And again, with frame generation on, the 4050 can feel even smoother while playing. The Witcher 3 was tested with its next-gen update, and was another example where the 1% lows were actually worse with the 4050, despite it coming out ahead in average frame rate. So the 3050 laptop was delivering a more consistent experience. Again, like Spider-Man just before, the 3050 started performing worse with DLSS on balanced mode, while the 4050 got better, almost removing the gap in 1% low performance. This game also has frame gen support, and just like the other games, it definitely felt much smoother while running my tests. It's the same story with Microsoft Flight Simulator. The 4050 was reaching a 38% higher average frame rate, but there were fewer dips with the older 3050. Using DLSS on balanced mode at least allowed the 3050 laptop to perform better this time, but the 4050 still had a 21% higher average frame rate with a slightly better 1% low now. I think this is a good candidate for frame generation, as latency isn't really important here, and that allowed the 4050 laptop to run much smoother. Dead Space had the biggest difference between the two GPUs out of all 25 games tested, with the 4050 laptop reaching a 79% higher average frame rate, though there was far less of a difference seen in the 1% lows. But at least the 4050 wasn't worse this time. A Plague Tale Requiem also didn't have any difference between the two GPUs in terms of 1% lows, but the 4050 was reaching 39% higher average FPS. Both laptops are able to run better by turning on DLSS with balanced mode, though the 4050 still had a good lead compared to the 3050. This is another game where frame generation support is available, and like the other games, this feature definitely made the game feel nicer to play. In Apex Legends, the 1% lows coming out of the 4050 were higher than even the average FPS coming out of the 3050, and the 4050 was reaching a 51% higher average frame rate. The gap was smaller in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, but the 4050 was still 35% faster compared to the 3050 in the game's benchmark. Alright, so the 4050 had decent leads in average FPS most of the time, but was sometimes worse in 1% lows. We'll just skip through the rest of the 15 games tested on screen now rather than waste your time having me talk through every single one, so feel free to pause the video if you want a closer look at any of the results. I think it's important to test a wide selection of games so we can get an accurate picture of the average performance differences to make the fairest possible conclusion. In other words, more data equals more better. Let's look at those average differences next. On average, over all 25 games tested, at 1080p, the RTX 4050 laptop GPU was about 38% faster compared to the RTX 3050 laptop GPU. This graph shows how much faster each game was on the 4050, so we can see results really vary depending on the specific game. These three down the bottom are CPU heavy, so the GPU difference hardly matters. Meanwhile, more GPU heavy games saw more than a 50% boost with the RTX 4050. And all results here are without DLSS or frame gen. There's more to the story than average FPS though. Here's how the dips in performance as measured by the 1% lows look. The 4050 was ahead in more games than not, but the 3050 laptop was able to offer a more stable result in at least 6 of the games. In another 6 games, the difference was less than 5% one way or the other, so not a big difference. Again, it's hard to say whether this is due to the CPU difference, but I suspect that it may be, as a number of the games doing better on the 3050 here were CPU heavier titles that also saw small differences in the previous average FPS graph. Or maybe it's due to the 3050 having a bigger memory bus. Here's how the frame rates look if we instead take the average of all 25 games. I think this better allows us to visually see the overall differences as a quick summary. Basically, the RTX 4050 4050 was able to offer us a 67 FPS experience in 25 games, while the 3050 was closer to the 50 FPS point. Here's how the difference looks if we instead compared the RTX 4050 with DLSS on balanced mode and frame generation enabled against the RTX 3050 with DLSS on balanced mode. So DLSS 3 versus DLSS 2. The 3050 does not support frame generation. This feature is only able to help out the 4050. Technically speaking, this graph isn't that useful as we're attempting to measure generated frames, but I don't really have a better way of comparing it other than telling you I thought frame-gen gameplay felt smoother. Outside of games, there's an even bigger performance difference, with the 4050 scoring 88% higher in the Blender Classroom test, or 101% higher in the Monster test, more than double, while V-Ray had a similar 99% higher score on the 4050 in the Ray Tracing test, and was 96% ahead in the CUDA test. Not bad considering the 4050 has 25% more CUDA and RT cores. So the 4050 performs better, but how much more does it cost, and is it worth it? Pricing and availability will change over time, so check the links below the video for updates and sales. And if any 3050 or 4050 laptops do go on sale, we'll be sure to add them to the gaminglaptop.deals website, so check that out to get the best deal on your next gaming laptop. We update it every day with the latest deals. MSI's GF63 with RTX 3050 graphics goes for $750 US, but I've seen it for both higher and lower amounts. Again, you'll have to check the link below for the current price. At the time of launch, MSI's GF63 with RTX 4050 graphics costs $1,000 US, which seems like a bit of a ripoff compared to other 4050 options, as I've discussed in the full review. But nevertheless, this is the cheapest an RTX 4050 laptop will be at launch, according to Nvidia's CES announcement, and I'm not sure how long it will be until we see sales. There's not much difference from a cost per frame perspective. The 4050 laptop costs 33% more money, but in our 25 games tested, it's also able to offer 38% better performance. So in this case, the 4050 version is worth paying more for if you're able to save up for it. This does not include DLSS or frame generation results either, which would be another plus for the 4050 in supported games. The 4050 would come out even further ahead at the same price if we instead used a different laptop like the Nitro 5, as it costs the same amount of money but has a higher GPU power limit, so more performance. But then it wouldn't be a fair comparison. The point here was to compare a low-powered 3050 and 4050 at 40 watts. So the 4050 does offer a decent performance uplift over the 3050 and could be worth paying more money for if you can afford it, even if you don't care about extra features like frame generation. I don't think that the 3050 is going away anytime soon, because with 4050 laptops starting from $1,000 US, well, it's not exactly a budget-friendly option for everyone. Personally, I have found frame generation to be a useful feature in the 6 games that I tested in this video, and as long as it keeps coming into new games, it is a feature that I could see myself recommending the 4050 for over the 3050. It was concerning to see worse 1% lows with the 4050 laptop in some games. It's hard to know for sure if that's due to the CPU difference, as the CPU with the 4050 has 4 P cores and 4 E cores. So I guess you could kind of argue that it's kind of like a quad core. Meanwhile, the CPU with the 3050 is 6 P cores. It could also just be because the 4050 has a smaller memory bus. For some reason, Nvidia didn't make it better than the 3050 in every aspect. Despite this, I still think that it's worth spending $200 to $300 more to get the 4050 if you can afford it. If you're after something with a bit more power than what we've seen from these laptops, then check out this video next. I've compared the RTX 3060 against the RTX 4060, so the next tier up from these GPUs. And I've done the same 25 game comparison, but also with the higher 1440p resolution, as those are more powerful GPUs. So I'll see you in that one next.